Thank you again to Telefilm Canada for presenting this session and the close-up series. Before passing things off to our moderator, I would like to briefly introduce today's speakers. And if you'd like to learn anything more about them, we will include a link in the chat with their full bios. But first we have Gorav Seth. Gorav is an advisor and film co-chair at Mogul Productions. He has worked for over 12 years in corporate finance and investment banking at leading independent investment dealers in Canada. Prior to his career in capital markets, Gorav spent over a decade working in the film and television industry as entertainment manager and film financier. Welcome, hi. Next we have Pauline Couture. Pauline is the co-CEO of Blockfilm and a seasoned media executive and advisor with Global Networks. She co-founded Blockfilm with Suzette Couture in 2019. In 2020, they partnered with Token Funder, Canada's pioneering digital securities firm, after obtaining a major investment from the Canada Media Fund. They obtained a groundbreaking Ontario securities exemption in March of 2021. Welcome, Pauline. Next, we have Shant Joshi. Shant is the president of Faye Pictures and a queer Indo-Canadian producer based in LA and Toronto. His credits include the films Porcupine Lake, International Dawn Chorus Day, and Noor and Layla, the hit web series Teenagers, and the Deku original series I'm Fine. Shant is an alum of the CFC, holds a certificate in entertainment law from Osgoode Hall, and was named to York U's top 30 change makers under 30. He currently sits on the board at BIPOC TV and Film. And now I will pass it off to our moderator for this session, Christine McGlade. Christine is a senior partner at Analytical Engine Interactive Inc. and has been a digital media producer, designer, and educator for over 20 years. She's a sessional lecturer in digital futures faculty at OCAD University in Toronto, where she teaches topics in user experience design and user research, data visualization, futures thinking, and the ethical issues that arise when we step into design leadership roles in the digital economy. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We're so excited to hear this conversation. Take it away, Christine.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, this promises to be a very lively discussion, I think. I'm gonna kick it off. I realize that we've learned a little bit about each of our panelists, but I do want to just go around the table and ask everyone to tell us a little bit more about your work, and specifically in the context of the topic today, in the context of the blockchain. If you can possibly, in the plainest language possible, explain your interest in or integration with these issues around non-fungible tokens and the blockchain. And I'm actually going to start with Shant. If you could tell us a little bit more about your work and your interest in this topic.
Yeah, so I'm a producer by trade. That's what I, work with talent, work with buyers, all that kind of stuff. And so we were trying to approach financing one of our upcoming movies, Relive a Tale of an American Island Cheerleader, which stars Emmy-nominated actress Rain Valdez. And we were trying to figure out, how can we finance it? Do we take the traditional route? Do we sell it to a streamer? Do we, what do we do with it? Pauline and I connected through CFC in regards to the setup of Blockfilm, and we had started talking about potentially setting up the project on the platform. And prior to, I'd heard different things about the blockchain. I'd learned about cryptocurrency and all that kind of stuff. And there were going back even 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I've seen panels on cryptocurrency involved in financing films, and that really never sort of went through. And so what was interesting for me for Blockfilm was that this was a platform that wasn't around cryptocurrency. It was, real dollars, but that you're using blockchain to commodify smart contracts, basically, with investors. And so that sort of started my journey in learning more about that way of using blockchain technology to finance a movie, and how that can be used towards transparency for the investors, for the producers, for collections. So I've sort of dived a bit deeper into it. I'm learning more about NFTs and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I'm very much someone who's still learning, but in it. Yeah.
So you're sort of going to be, I guess, the voice of the producer potentially on the panel today. That was a great segue into actually moving over to Pauline now. Pauline, if you want to pick that up, and again, just tell us a little bit more about your work, about Blockfilm, and a lot of those enticing things that Shant just mentioned.
You're muted.
Yeah, Pauline, you need to unmute.
Sorry about that, because you guys muted it, so I forgot it wasn't me. So our team came primarily from the creative industry side, the production side. It was a group of people who felt that increasingly with, it's always been a very patchwork system that we have in Canada especially, but also in other countries where people encounter the same kinds of challenges. And we just thought there's got to be a better way, and particularly with the cost of gap financing to producers, it was one of the things that really impelled us to start exploring how we could bring down the cost of raising money for producers, allow smaller producers to have greater control, have a lower profitability threshold, and be able to access private investors directly. So I don't know if we had realized what a big dream that was. I'm not sure we would have launched ourselves with such enthusiasm into it. But it's been a real journey, and people like Shant and particularly Shant have been extraordinarily helpful partnering with us to learn how to do this, because we're doing something that, and I think Gorav would say the same thing, we're doing something that's never been done before. It's brand new, it's groundbreaking, and we chose to go the legal, regulated financial instrument route. What we were trying to do was empower producers to issue their own legal, regulated financial instrument in their production. And so that is, just like big companies can issue stock on the stock market. Well, there isn't yet a real secondary trading market for this kind of thing, but it's coming. It's all coming, just like cryptocurrency is coming. We don't think producers our sense is that producers are not interested right now in raising money in cryptocurrency with all the volatility that entails, and how you can't pay a cameraman in cryptocurrency unless he's a very wealthy cameraman ready to take a flyer on something, in which case he's probably not working for a small producer. but the point was that we wanted to give greater accountability and transparency to private investors who are not used to investing in this space. So there's a whole learning curve that has to happen there. And we wanted to give producers more control over the issuance of their financial instruments, the timing of getting the money, the transparency of the contracts, all of those things. So it's a big vision, and the CMF thought into it, which was, the only way we could have done this. But we do have an exemption order from the Ontario Securities Commission that allows us to facilitate the creation of these financial offerings in very simplified, streamlined ways compared. I know, Shant, must make you want to laugh because it's been so complicated, but if you think about producing a $200,000 prospectus, with hundreds and hundreds of pages, our process is so much simpler than that, and will be, as we learn more and streamline things more and get things more automated with time, it will become much easier for producers to log on and create their accounts and get their stuff done. But we're still, we're just barely out of the gate, so it's early days. Now you're muted, Christine.
Thank you for both that and reminding me that I was muted. So Gorav, I'm going to pass it over to you. And we've just heard about, transparency and obviously financing. We're talking a lot about financing, and I just wanted to ask you if you can describe in as plain a language as you can the kind of work that you're doing, and how you're also perhaps dealing with financing, but I think in a slightly different way. If you want to go ahead.
Sure. So my background comes from capital markets and fundraising. I raise money for a living, and I got introduced to blockchain back in 2016-17, and saw the ability to reduce friction when trying to interact with different stakeholders. And that was essentially the genesis to what Mogul is. Mogul is the project that I've joined as a advisor and co-chair for the film side. And what it is it's a platform to democratize the film financing side and also create a marketplace for NFTs. The difference with what we're doing versus what Pauline's doing, going through kind of the Ontario securities regulator here, is we actually sold about $10 million in NFTs via access passes. So we didn't actually raise any money, and we don't necessarily have any investors. But what we do is there's a story about Deadpool, and this is what the team had really embraced, is that the story, from what I understand, was that Ryan Reynolds was trying to make this movie for a long time, and none of the studios would buy into an R-rated action film. And he ended up putting up a trailer online, and the people spoke. They voted on it and essentially compelled the studio to finance Deadpool. And then everybody knows the success of Deadpool. So the intention with Mogul is really to provide a voice to the public, to the audiences, and empower them so they can vote, interact, and engage with the films that we have on our showcase. So filmmakers, creators can submit projects onto our platform, and we will screen them, put them up on our platform, and then the community, people, viewers, can actually vote on what they want to see get made, and then we finance the film. So there's a little bit of a difference there because we're not taking in investors, but the takeaway is that we're able to connect with a global audience of fans and crypto enthusiasts that can support projects and be involved. And the NFT side allows for an entirely new revenue stream that may not have been available to producers or creatives in the past. I mean, you can take it's a new form of collectibles in a sense, where you can take anything from like a movie poster. Imagine having an original movie poster by George Lucas, like in the Star Wars films, and having it autographed and memorialized onto something, and then selling an original copy. I mean, you can take anything from static art to motion video. You could actually take a full-length movie and put it on the blockchain as an NFT. You could build a smart contract into it, so there's a revenue stream every time the film trades hands or is viewed, and eliminate the intermediaries, which is pretty amazing, right? It's frictionless, it's fast, it's cheap. You have a global audience, capital moves very quickly, and it helps the smaller films. I read something a little while ago, not to meander too long, but there was a really interesting kind of a concept on how to use blockchain and NFTs. Imagine you're an independent filmmaker and you want to finance a 20-minute short film. And getting financing for a feature film is hard enough. You could essentially sell NFTs to your short film, via the blockchain, via cryptocurrencies, and maybe sell a limited edition of 1,000 or 10,000 of those, and you generate a few $100,000 to finance the movie. So you have that capital, you make that short film, and then you go on with your career and start doing more and more things. And imagine down the line you end up winning an Academy Award or Canadian CSA award. The secondary market for those original short film NFTs that you sold would presumably increase in value because they're rare, they're valuable, they're original, and you're actually connecting with your community directly, and they're in part kind of supporting you financially along this journey. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, if I could just pick up on that, and again, not to sort of meander too much, but it almost sounds like your model, and at the risk of oversimplifying, it almost sounds like crowdfunding Indiegogo type of a model. And the NFTs almost sound like a potentially more viable alternative to the kinds of commitments that producers might have made in a crowdfunding model in the past that might have been difficult to live up to, presence on the set or getting into the credits or things like that. So am I getting that kind of right? Like, is there an opportunity for filmmakers to sort of, like you're suggesting, kind of monetize these NFTs, non-fungible tokens, for fans in a way that is, in a sense, easier for them to fulfill than the sort of old school crowdfunding.
Yeah, I think there's challenges with financing film via blockchain at present, just because it's such a nascent industry. It's new, it's evolving, regulation is still very much fluid, and things are changing very quickly from province to province, country to country. The NFT side is a little bit simpler right now, and I mean, there could be legislation that changes it, but essentially what you're doing, what the blockchain is a decentralized ledger where, you know, people have, there's no central body that's governing an organization. It's the people. And the NFT is a way to really prove that something is original, unique, and scarce. And you can take that concept and you can apply it to anything that you can, you know, you could take data from anything. It could be songs, it could be, you know, so it could be music, it could be motion video, it could be behind the scenes deleted clips. You know, we partnered up with a documentary film and we auctioned off NFTs that were posters, autographed posters. There were deleted scenes from the movie, and you're able to connect with the fans. We had a lot of interactive things between the creatives at the film and then from the global crypto fans, and they could actually tell, like, there's a direct kind of input, and because everything's on chain, it's easier to control. What I mean by on chain is you have this ecosystem in the blockchain community and cryptocurrency. Let's just say it's like Chuck E. Cheese, and you need tokens. So everybody that's outside of Chuck E. Cheese needs to learn how to get into it. They need to learn how to buy tokens. They need to know how to go there, how to get in, and how to operate within that ecosystem. Once you're dealing with people from outside the world, there's this kind of disconnect, because payroll and everything is going to take place through, you know, entertainment services and traditional mediums, and then you have to bridge that gap. Whereas NFTs, everything kind of lives already on the blockchain. You can take something and make, you can take whatever that is, whatever you want to create into an NFT, and it lives in the blockchain, and you're interacting, and there's nothing that you have to really do from outside the world, like outside the crypto world. I'm not sure if that's clear. I'm trying to.
Yeah, I mean, I again, I'm probably an oversimplification. NFTs sound a little bit like a potentially effective way to put some very clear intellectual property rights around digital assets, which have previously been very hard to control because they're sort of infinitely copyable. Pauline, it looks like you want.
Yeah, I wanted to say that we haven't begun yet to issue NFTs, but we will. We're in the process of designing some with our producers, and they will take the form of experiences and collectibles, depending on, it's entirely up to the producer how they want to define it, what they want to do with it, how they want to issue it. But it will, we are viewing them for the moment, and there's, you know, the NFTs have enormous potential as much bigger factors than they are right now. But for the moment, we're looking at them as something that you stack on top of your cash raised for your production budget, and that provides you with a potential new way to monetize your IP in ways that can be ongoing. I mean, that's the beauty of an NFT, is you can embed a royalty in it, or I'm calling it that, a royalty, but it's not necessarily called a royalty, just a revenue stream that comes back to the original creator. And that, you know, that's a big change from the analog world where, you know, even if I'm Picasso, I sold my painting, I sold it for however much, and 10 or 20 years later, it's worth 10 times that. I don't see any revenue stream back from that. You know, I just got what I got at the outset. So for creators, that's always been an issue. And so this has, you know, really cool potential. But it's kind of it's kind of the Wild West out there, as Gorav would know. You know, it's very early days right now. But anything can be an NFT, really, when you get right down to it. The point of it is in this universe of people who are completely living their lives in the digital world, a digital authentication of ownership is very real to them, and I think there's a big generation gap around that. When you talk about NFTs to people in their 60s or 70s, they look at you and say, but it's vaporware, it's nothing. What is it? They just can't identify with the idea of paying a lot of money to own something ephemeral in the ether that isn't something concrete, so we're in a transition of how we view these things, how people value things. If you imagine paying $10,000 for a pixelated crypto kitty, I can't, but people do it, so I think what Gorav is doing is on the sort of leading edge of capturing some of the froth at the front end, but it'll be really interesting to see how it pans out, how it becomes more concrete.
There is, I don't know if anybody followed, I think CAA signed, was it Bored Ape Yacht Club? It was, there's a series of kind of artwork, and I think they got signed by CAA recently, I'll have to check, but there's a series of like animated pictures that they're selling as NFTs. And some of those are selling for millions and millions and millions of dollars. Right. And if you look at like even Steph Curry, the basketball player, you can see his avatar is an NFT. And I got explained this actually just, I think the same night after we had our kind of initial discussion as panelists before we started this, is somebody 20 years younger than me explained to me what the appeal is in NFTs. Is in the pre-blockchain kind of NFT world, people will go out and you buy a Rolex, or you have a nice watch, you have a nice suit, a piece of clothing, shoes, and you go out and you meet people and interact, and it was a way kind of to show status and all that. People would trade collectibles, hockey cards, they'd collect DVDs. Well, now, especially with COVID accelerating kind of the isolation of people and everybody living kind of on their computer, you have a lot of young people that spend most of their time in front of a computer where most of their friends are online. And instead of buying a fancy new watch or a car or shoes or whatever it is, the NFTs have almost become like a status symbol for this generation. It's kind of the new Rolex for the Gen Z. And
well, they're probably looking for more climate friendly status symbols and symbol,
Yeah, I think I just want to bring Shant back into the conversation as well, because it really, what's coming up for me is we've said a lot of things about, democratizing this sort of like the financing space. But often when we talk about the democratization effect of new technologies, we think about bringing more voices to the table and allowing more voices to come forward. And Shant, I just wanted to circle back to you and ask about, NFTs as sort of like identity factors, and if there's something happening in this space that you see some promise for potentially previously marginalized voices, filmmakers, to be able to get financed, get heard, and be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear that what Gorav was saying, this whole status symbol thing, the indulgence of wealth and money and power being used. Okay, I can't go buy a Rolex, I'm gonna buy an NFT. It's a status symbol, right? Thing like I just this weekend was diving into the metaverse, and there's NFT art galleries.
That's a whole other panel.
It's a whole nother thing. But I will flag a couple. I'm cautiously optimistic, right? And there's a couple things that are of concern to me. One is the climate effect of NFTs. The amount of code and computer power that is required to set it up is immense, and it's not going to fit in your computer. It's going to be on these servers that are emitting a lot of carbon emissions. So if there's a way to control that, and I think there can be. I think once upon a time our phones used to be this big, and now they're this big. So
yeah, it's already
there's always some.
It's already
Yeah.
happening, Shant, like we're moving from proof of work to proof of stake, or even, there's all kinds of trends where people are very conscious that this could be a big Achilles heel for the blockchain industry.
Definitely.
That it could prevent it from taking off completely, because young people are very concerned about that.
Totally.
And a lot of older people too.
I would say that the thing is this is early adopter stage period where minting an NFT also is costly, right? So not everyone's going to mint an NFT that's going to sell for $1 million. The common occurrence really is that they go for a couple $100 maybe. But in that process of minting it and then selling it and all the fees that are associated with it, you may end up with somewhere around 20 to 40% having to expense it basically to actually create so you do profit at the end of the day, but there is a cost that's associated with it. It's not it's not like it's not the democratization as like YouTube, like but at the same time it's about adopting the technology. The other thing is that like crowdfunding was so simple and easy and workable because everyone had credit cards. Not everyone has Ethereum and cryptocurrency. That's changing. A lot of people are getting into it. So you're going to see that grow. And a lot of people putting their wealth towards it. And that's sort of where I think, to your point about marginalized communities, it's like, yeah, like sometimes, you don't have the opportunity to go into a fancy dinner and, knock elbows with, a billionaire. So that's an opportunity where you have direct access to a wealthier class, because sometimes, they may decide to spend it's about how they spend their time. Do they spend their time on the NFT page? And so that's sort of like, that's the other critical thing, is that who are these people? Who are the people that are using the technology? It is wealthier people, that are buying these NFTs at big prices and all that kind of stuff. Like, who can afford these $1 million things? And so there is that higher class of people that exist there and that you can access there. Basically, that is something that is attractive. We're about to launch a little social media thing about our project on Blockfilm, and our social media executive or director of branding and marketing accidentally clicked post before we were supposed to post it. It was unscheduled and we removed it, but within 2 minutes I got 5-6 texts being like, where's your token funder page? Where's your how do I find this thing? It's like my friends
get on it.
Basically.
Yeah,
so there's this sort of like I don't know, there's a lot of people with money who just want to spend it on these kind of things.
Well, that brings me sort of back to Pauline. So, I mean, it seems like Blockfilm is allowing filmmakers to sort of get in on the investment action, without having to like put out a public offering and all of these really complex things. You talked about lowered costs, but what about the investors that you're bringing to the table? Is there
the investors
kind
are
of a
also
democratization there where,
yeah, they're getting access to something that a new class of investment that they would not before have had access to.
But is it a new class of investors? Or are they?
Well, that's one of our challenges, right? Because traditionally, people who have invested, private investors who have traditionally invested in film, are people, two things. They're very knowledgeable about a very arcane, complex, old-fashioned industry. And secondly, they're used to being able to make huge profit margins on the backs of producers, because it's a very
Wait, are you
high-risk
saying that
industry.
the film industry is not highly
Pardon me?
profitable in Canada? Are you saying the film industry is not highly profitable in Canada?
Well,
I'm being sarcastic.
far be it from me. But, and also we've got, for older investors, 25, 30 years ago, they got really badly burned on certain tax shelters, and every dentist in Saskatchewan was invested in Canadian films and lost all the money. So that kind of echoes for a long time, like a fine wine. The finish doesn't go away for a long, long time. So really, when you're talking about attracting new accredited investors to invest in these new regulated financial instruments, you're also talking about educating some people about doing something in a completely new and different way. And these digital security instruments that we're talking about are quite a bit larger than taking a flyer on a few stars tokens on Gorav's site, right? So it's just a much smaller commitment, and it's open to everybody. So Gorav's is retail, and I'm wholesale. I'm only dealing with people who have enough money that they can afford to take a flyer on something, and they can afford to lose that money if it comes to that. Now, that isn't to say that projects like Shant's Relive, I mean, I'm a big believer in that project, and I could see it taking off at Sundance, and I could see it doing really well. I think it's right smack in the zeitgeist right now. It's fresh, it's fun, it's well written, it's well designed. I mean, it's a great project. And I have really high hopes that it will be a breakthrough project for us. And in fact, in the next few weeks, we're going to be meeting with a group of LGBTQ investors who care very much to it, not just about projects like Shant's, but to advance the career of artists like Shant. So we have to find those people, those people that are ready to experiment, to take a flyer, to have fun with their money, to experience a connection with a creator that, I've chaired 2 theater boards in Toronto in the past, in the theater. If you think Canadian film is a money loser, try running a Canadian theater company. It's really bad. Artists in theater have to do other things. They have to be caterers and bartenders, and they can't live off just the theater. But it always astounded me how the big shots on Bay Street, people who run investment funds, people who run law firms, people who run big companies, they love to come and hang around at the theater with the actors and the directors. There's something about the creative process that stirs their passions, that connects with them on a human level that they don't get in their day-to-day lives in business. So we're trying to figure out how to connect that, and it's slowly happening. But it's
we're stuck looking at spreadsheets all day.
Not my forte, frankly, but we think that there will be a growing number of people who are interested in something different than the core things that keep their income ticking away. I mean, it's not for people who are betting their rent money. It's not for those people.
We're gonna go to questions in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to ask you to just clarify or tell me a little bit more about, and this is, I guess, for everyone, just a little bit more about transparency. So, Pauline, for example, you mentioned that there's more transparency for producers, for financiers.
Yeah, so
what are we talking about there?
So because we have invested in the legal advice and the creative thinking, and we've got a suite of simplified, streamlined documentation, term sheets, things like that, that are like, the term sheets are very simple and very clear, and you're not producing a 100-page prospectus that you can get lost in, and a person who doesn't know what they're doing, hasn't gotten experience with that, would never find their way through it, right? So on the blockchain side, when our partner Token Funder, which is an exempt market dealer, licensed by the Ontario Securities Commission and the other major commissions across Canada, and we've now, by the way, got an ability to onboard US investors for Canadian projects. We've now got the approved documentation to be able to do that, which is a new thing that just happened last week. So when investors come to Token Funder, they're dealing with very clear documents. They're dealing with smart contracts embedded that record these transactions immutably, transparently, and publicly. No one can ever go back and say this didn't happen. Now, if you've ever invested in a traditional film, okay, and these poor guys, these poor producers, they have to keep 7, 10 different kinds of records and books because every funder wants it presented differently. It's extremely confusing. It takes 7 to 10 years to get your money out. And at that point, there's no guarantee that the Canada Revenue Agency is going to agree with your interpretation of what happened. So when you have a very clear, very transparent, regulated financial instrument and you have to report exactly what happened with that financial instrument on the very clear terms of a one-page term sheet, CRA is never going to push back on that. They're never going to say, no, it's not true that you lost money or made money. And because it can be recorded for tax purposes for capital gains and losses transparently and easily, someone who has capital gains to write off can put them against that. No problem, no pushback. And we have also the ability to resell those tokens among accredited investors, which is a breakthrough. It's new. It's never been possible to have any kind of liquidity in the traditional film market. So now if I'm if I bought Shant's token when he's still pre-production, and all of a sudden, Rain Valdez wins the Outfest Legacy Award, and there's huge publicity. People have come to realize Rain Valdez is a huge budding star, and the prospects for the film improve and get even better. Well, maybe I'll decide to sell the token to somebody else and take my little profit and go. That's an opportunity that the investor never would have had before. So, we think that's going to be fairly compelling. And we also think that we will be able to cash flow tax credits, which offering investors a decent government-backed return, but without the huge setup fees that the banks charge, so that it becomes much more efficient for producers to get their money that way too. And those are the keys to viability, because producers who have to mortgage their houses to live for 2 years before they get their tax credits, that's never allowing them to capitalize and move forward.
I'm glad you brought up tax credits. You knew it was going to have to happen in this discussion. I'm actually there was a question asked, and I see that it's in the answered section, but I do want to ask Gorav just for a little bit of follow-up. So there was a question asking, when you mentioned that Mogul might then invest in the film, and the question was, does that mean that Mogul owns the copyright in the film? And I think it's a bit more complex than that, really. How does that work? If Mogul invests in a film, how much of the total budget of the film might that represent? If not 100%, I'm assuming not. And then how does that work with the tax credit situation and all of the other pieces of the funding puzzle that we typically need to put into place here in Canada?
So I guess to answer that question, it does depend on every situation. Right now, if we were to participate in funding a film, it would be as an equity participant or debt person, whatever we negotiate for each project. So we come in as any other investor would, and the cash that we have, or the crypto that we have, we get converted into cash. So from the producer's point of view, it wouldn't really make any type of difference where the money's coming from, as long as they're getting it. In terms of owning copyright, that would depend on every situation. If we were to finance 100% of a project, then the ownership discussion would obviously take place. And because there's a community, we wouldn't own it necessarily. It'd be the token holders that would own it. So a lot of it is like, what we do now is we talk to like blockchain and the crypto community. You're talking to a global audience of stakeholders. And it's really like, imagine having a telephone line with the world and saying, well, what do you want me to make? There was an artist, there's a filmmaker that raised a few $1 million, I think, in less than 24 hours with no investors for a documentary. And he did it by going and engaging with these online crypto communities. And I think the big takeaway for me, being in this space over the last few years, is everything's driven by community. People have the intention of creating NFTs or starting their own tokens. And if you don't have the market embrace it, if you're working in a vacuum, then you're not going to get the support, and therefore you're not going to get buyers, you're not going to get community members. So I think that the biggest thing is being able to engage and market with this community. And I found with every initiative that we've taken, it's been a matter of this, like having an open forum with the community and the filmmakers and saying, well, what do you want to see? How do you want us to do it? What would you like to see for this project? How would you like us to fund it? What would you like to see in terms of experiences? What do you think would be valuable NFTs? So to go back to the original question about ownership, it all depends on every situation. Because it's essentially a blank slate, the filmmakers can negotiate whatever they want. I mean, if you created NFTs, and because the laws are still very much fluid right now, those wouldn't necessarily take away from anything that you're doing with domestic distributors or foreign distributors. You could actually have distribution on the blockchain that's entirely different from your Netflix deal or Lionsgate deal or whatever you have.
Yeah, although the distributors will be pretty good at fixing their contracts quickly to make sure that nothing untoward happens to their interests, I would think.
I think it's interesting too, just reflecting on what you were just saying there in terms of, responding to what the community wants. And Shant, I just wanted to get your perspective on that. I mean, how does that sound to you as a producer? Is that, because sometimes we want to make content, we want to make films that might be difficult for the community to embrace, and maybe they don't want it. But,
I think food for the soul. I don't know. I try and make movies that are audience oriented. I try and when I read a script, I think, would people want to watch this? So I don't know, should people watch this in a sense of like, I don't want to like feed people like, cough syrup, I want to feed them something that's, nice and is good for you. I think as well regarding the copyright thing is that is like, just like Pauline was just saying, like, that's going to be something that is going to be riders and contracts, and is going to be, clause number 45 in your deal memo, where, as a director, maybe you're like, you know what, I want 10% of any NFTs that the producer mints, right? Because I think who's going to mint it, who's going to create it, is the distributor that mints it, is it the producer that mints it, right? And so that should, I agree that should be shared, but that has to be negotiated, and people have to think about that. So I think we're definitely
and I'm willing to bet that with any name actor represented by CAA, there's a clause in their contracts, every contract, that says, and for all time any other technology that gets developed, I mean, they've got an infinity clause in there to cover all eventualities. I can't see, I mean, I'm sure there's always people trying to take advantage of other people all the time, but I don't see that happening easily to real professionals in the business, because they're highly desirable people. They have a market value, and they're going to demand to be included in anything that brings in extra revenue.
But I'm not sure everyone here is rep by CAA, so I'm just saying, like, for those who aren't, here's something to think about for your next deal memo or your next contract. Like, how do you put that in there? Yeah.
I think the beauty, though, is exactly on that point, is that for everybody that isn't represented by the majors, this is a real viable alternative to garnering financing and an audience. I mean, the way YouTube and Instagram influencers and talent can interact with their fans, you can think of it like the same way, but not only are these people supporting you in terms of followers and likes, but they're supporting you with their wallets as well. And the difference also is, like, in the last week, we ended up having somehow some large crypto communities in Vietnam decided they loved Mogul, and our token went up 1,700%, and we've had about $60 or $70 million of volume traded, and probably 10,000 users. And it's like on the other side of the world, Vietnam, and we're having all these requests from the Vietnamese community asking, is there going to be any initiatives for the film and entertainment industry there. So it's interesting because you're no longer just targeting an audience that's close to you. It's a global audience, and in terms of not making anything that for the masses, like unique, maybe art house films that don't appeal to a large audience. Well, who's to really dictate that large audience? Here, you can actually go in and talk to people and find out. I mean,
Sure.
From what I've read, there's 400 million plus crypto users. If somebody wants to see, a period piece, I'm pretty sure there's some people there that are going to appreciate that. And you're no longer dealing with, XYZ intermediary to say, no, nobody wants to see it. Nobody wants to see a movie about this subject, or
Right.
that'll never sell. I mean, now you can connect with the audience directly.
And Gorav, do you have any insights as to what was the spark that lit up that Vietnamese community for Mogul? Any idea?
So we for one of the projects, there's a documentary or a mockumentary called Reboot Camp, and we did a series of NFTs for them. And they had a premiere party in LA, and a lot of the partners that we have came and invited other blockchain enthusiasts, and there was I think there was a group there that ended up really liking what we were doing and speaking to the rest of the team, and somehow it ended up in some type of some crypto community. I literally just woke up having like 600 messages and seeing triple the number of different wallet addresses and all these new users on our platform. So it really is amazing. Like another kind of nice little success story. And
Wouldn't have happened if the party was on Zoom, probably, though, right?
No. But it's really interesting, and I think the possibilities are so massive. And I can tell everybody, I know we're running out of time, but again, I'm not a overly technical person. I worked in the film industry, as a manager. I did a little bit of film financing, and I was a banker, but I'm not a crypto guy. And I literally went on to YouTube and I watched videos to learn how to do stuff, and started getting onto the various social media channels. And I implore every single person that's listening to go into YouTube, look up what is blockchain, what is MetaMask, what is crypto, what is DeFi, what is staking, what is proof of work, proof of stake. You'll go down this rabbit hole, and I mean, this kind of 4 or 5 hours will be, I think, the best. It was the best time I've ever spent in my life. It's been very, very interesting, and with that, going to Telegram, going to Discord. I wasn't familiar with these platforms, but this is where people go and you can see what's trending, what isn't. And we have a Marvel artist named Rob Pryor. He's an artist. He makes tribute art, and we had and this can be done with films as well. But he ended up talking to the community, and we did a vote to say, what would here's a very talented artist. What would the community like to see? And they said, we want to see a tribute to the Wolf of Wall Street. So the audience spoke. He, would interact with them, and created this Wolf of Wall Street painting. We turned it into an NFT, and then they burned the original copy. So it only lives as an NFT, and we sold it for what was it, $300,000. And the amazing thing was that this was something that was driven by the fans and sold to the fans. And it just shows, like him interacting and connecting with the fans and speaking to them. I think it was what made the difference, and what made the NFT sell for that much, and made we had 500,000 people following worldwide when he did the live stream. So I really think learning about the space and engaging with the community is really important. I find that, and what I've learned is that anytime somebody sees, like in the crypto community, they see people from the outside world coming in and trying to exploit them for money, or something that's not genuine. So you can look at a lot of different examples of people that have been successful, and those that haven't had successful launches. And it's those that have just lent their name versus those that are actually immersed in it. You can look at Mike Tyson's Twitter. You can look at, there was a music artist named Tory Lanez that sold 1 million copies of his NFT that was paired with artwork in like less than 30 seconds. And I know that's possible because I've seen it. It's happening, and I think everybody here should really spend some time to do it. I mean, this is a very high level conversation, but this is a new kind of burgeoning industry, and I think it's going to become a lot more prevalent in our lives. Institutions are coming in, the industry is getting very much involved. The number, as the friction points or technical friction points become less and less, you're going to have more widespread adoption, and I think it's going to become an important component for those that don't have access to raise millions of dollars from studios, from institutional investors, because it is very much controlled. I mean, that's the problem with Hollywood or the industry. You have a handful of large players that dictate, these are the stars that sell, these are the ones that are bankable, this is the type of content that needs to be made. We're going to be the ones that control the distribution, where you can actually take all that power back by utilizing the blockchain. You can distribute your projects, you can connect with your fans, you can sell art, you can sell films, music, and get support from the community. And there's nobody in between, and everything's on the blockchain. You can't hide from it. Every single transaction is up there. You can look up at people's wallets. You can look up the transactions. Like, one of the biggest problems with the film financing space I've found as an investment banker is that you give money to a producer, it's a black hole. I don't know how this XYZ film compares to the other film. Producer X has a film with these attachments and says this is so great and it's going to do really well. I don't know about their track record. I don't know how the money is actually being spent. I don't know how it's going to do. Versus the other film, is this a better one than the other one? And the concept, you start with the concept and then you hope it sells. Whereas you can go the other way around, right? And find out what the community wants to see, make it, and get supported.
Yeah, and that's very complementary. Actually, it's not competing with what we do, which is very much more creator driven. We think, we want to build fan communities too and have lots of input and lots of exchange and engagement. But at the end of the day, creators want to drive their own creative visions, and they want to be financed to do what they want to do. And there's always going to be tension there, but we are more. Our locus is more on the creator side.
Yeah, I think you probably already, in what you just said there, Gorav, you probably answered Adam's question. So there was a question here about intermediaries, and this is like the ongoing, issue that you spoke at length about. How do we eliminate the middleman? And it does seem like there's so much promise in the blockchain and with NFTs to eliminating the middleman, but and I do agree with you. I think that education is probably the answer, but I think there also still needs to be, I think Blockfilm is a kind of a different kind of a middleman, perhaps. And in what way are you at Blockfilm maybe a more a lower, like you take less, I guess.
Can I quickly just add something about that? Sorry, Pauline.
Okay.
It's I think what really this is about is, or in the grand scheme of things, is the what's what I'm sure most people understand is a creator economy, right? When Instagram came around, people could commodify that and put Nike shoes on and put that on their Instagram. Now they became branding agents. I just met Rain's branding agent on Saturday. We were talking about reaching out to Marriott Bonvoy to help finance the movie, right? It's like a middle person will show up. Where there is money, a middle person will show up.
And Shant, a point about that. Yeah. If you're going to Marriott Bonvoy, mm-hmm. What you can, if you wish, it's entirely your decision, but what you could say to them is that if you chose to spend marketing dollars in the form of digital security tokens on Token Funder, mm-hmm. you're actually building a return on your marketing investment in money. Like your marketing investment will not be a sunk cost in exchange for, you'll have the same privileges and visibility as if you
Mhm.
had done a straight corporate sponsorship, but now you're an investor in the film and you're going to get a return on your investment. You know, I mean, I think that's a very powerful argument that we could use for this new way of doing things, even, you know, for potential sponsorship and branding opportunities.
Totally. But I think just my point being that at the end of the day, there is going to be the middle people, but the creators are the ones that are going to be driving you know, the whatever the product be, whether it be an NFT. And I guess that's sort of like it's a tool towards the larger creation, which is the film. But yeah, I think that's just sort of where we need to understand that it is creator driven, and NFTs are creator driven right now, but they will soon become something that I imagine would have some sort of middle person involved, because not everyone wants to educate themselves on how to drive up this and do that, and sometimes they
and there's room for both approaches. You know,
yeah.
What Gorav is doing is going to be very appealing for certain audiences and certain creators, and other creators, certainly a lot of the ones I know, they would be horrified and to have to answer to a crowd every minute about every decision they're making on their creative. You know, so but there's room for all of it.
It is really, you don't have to. Sorry, you don't necessarily have to make the community get involved in every decision, opine on the script. It's
no,
really
I'm just saying what creators are afraid of. You know,
okay. But yeah, I mean, the intermediary really is a smart contract. The elimination of an intermediary is simply a function of programming and rules. And the beauty about blockchain is you can actually implement all those rules into a smart contract where there's nobody dictating it other than what's written in the programming of the smart contract. So that's the possibilities are, I think, endless. I don't know if there's any right direction to go in this. It is new, and I think there's room for many different approaches. But I think the takeaway is that this is an industry that moves very, very quickly. There's a lot of capital. You get to connect directly with their users. You can give a voice to people that may have been marginalized previously, and have them participate in something because they're part of something a bit larger than any of the individual participants themselves.
It's a fascinating moment.
Yeah, we have maybe 1 minute left, and I see there's just a couple of questions, but there's most of the questions in the Q&A have sort of been answered in many ways. We do have a question, maybe there's a quick answer. Pauline, is there a minimum budget or size of financing shortfall to be raised for which it makes sense to engage with Blockfilm?
We have projects ranging from $85,000 to 13 million US, and 50 more in the pipeline. There's it has to be developed and partially and packaged. We're not taking people starting from scratch, and we're not taking amateurs, people who've never done anything in their lives. Yes, fresh new voices, but they have to know what they're doing.
All right, well, that takes us to 4 o'clock. So I thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for all the questions. We did not get to all the questions, and I'm sure that a lot of the attendees would like to know if there's ways that they can connect with anyone on the panel afterwards to follow up on
anything. Sure, on LinkedIn.
Great.
No problem.
All right.
I posted our Instagram or our social media handle on the chat.
Thank you, Shant and Pauline, and
I
Gorav. I'll hand it back to the Academy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you so much again. Thanks so much for that great conversation, everyone. I feel like we need a part 2 of this conversation. As you were saying, there's so many questions coming in the chat, and it's such a detailed and nuanced topic that I feel like we could talk about this for such a long time. So thank you so much for bringing us through that overview of this session. I want to thank Gorav, Pauline, Shant, and Christine for today's conversation. And also another thank you to our partners at Telefilm Canada for presenting this session. If you are posting about this event on social media, don't forget to tag us in your posts. We are at the CDN Academy, and Telefilm Canada can be found at Telefilm_Canada.